all food. What are we going to eat? How are we going to eat it? How resilient is the provision of that food, and is it going to be secure, and how can we make it more secure? And that's what we're going to be discussing today. And that is a theme that is obviously very important in Indonesia. It's a very important priority of President Prabowo, and being self-reliant as best any country can is the single most important thing. And it's a theme that our panel here are very well versed and in their work and in their professional lives. So what we're going to try and do today is have a conversation. Everything all right? Silence at the back. Would you like me to see it or not see it? Should I keep talking? I can walk and chew gum at the same time. Right, that's enough of me. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask the panelists to each briefly introduce themselves, and then I'm going to give a bunch of questions, and then we're going to see where we get. So Himanshu, over to you. Introduce yourself and explain just where you sit in the food economy and the work that you're doing to make the world of food security more safe, stable, and resilient.
Thanks, Ben. My name is Himanshu Gupta. I'm the CEO and co-founder of ClimateAi. We call ourselves as an AI-based climate and food security platform for the world. I know there's a lot of jargons there, but I can explain later. And in my former role, I used to be a climate policymaker, first with the government of India, and then with Vice President Al Gore. So looking forward to a discussion. And where I sit in the value chain, so now I am the typical AI bro from Silicon Valley, who thinks, all the problems, who does not think that all the problem can just be solved with AI. So I'm very optimistic about how AI can help, augment the decision makers who are going to solve the food security problem.
Thank you. Hannah.
Good day, everyone. I'm Carolina Zimmerman. I'm a Brazilian farmer, second generation, but also there's a different sort of farm, so I consider myself first and second generation. It's a long story. We also do have input distributor, so we take companies as J's to resell to the farmers, so farmers are also our clients. And we are also working with AI, so we do have a project for AI for farming in general. We grow crops, so soybeans, beans, sunflowers, seed, corn seed, and etc., and also beef cattle.
Thank you. Real pleasure to be here. I'm Shroff from UPL, Chairman, CEO of UPL. We are a global seeds and crop protection business operating in 140 countries around the world. Basically focused on our focus is farmer resilience, and we are investing a lot of our capital in developing technologies to really fight climate change and help farmers be more profitable. I had the pleasure of spending it's supposed to be a 10-minute meeting with the president, and because I started talking about agriculture, 2 hours later we were still in that meeting. So I know what you're saying. He's passionate about agriculture, and we talked about he wants to grow wheat, he wants to improve productivity on rice, and I think it's a fantastic opportunity where, Indonesia, I think the uniqueness of Indonesia is there's a lot of people involved in agriculture. They are short of food. Of course, they export a lot of palm oil, but so the opportunity to innovate and bring technology to really change the game are very, very possible, and we are very excited. We have a seed business there, we have a agrochemical business there, we are leaders in the seeds and chemical business in Indonesia, present in all the islands and have production facilities there, so we're really excited to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, and good morning, everyone. My name is Rania Dagash-Kamara. I work for the World Food Programme. Now, to many of you, we are known as the world's largest humanitarian agency, but the reality is we are a dual mandated agency. So we work on resilience and development, and we work on humanitarian response. And that means that we work to build the resilience of communities in basically food systems, but especially towards the end in market access and processing in support of post-harvest losses. Where I sit in that, I head partnerships and innovation, so pretty small portfolios these days. And I look forward to the conversation. And thank you to Indonesia House.
Right, Rania, let's start with you. You talked about the dual mandate that you have. If we focus on that second pillar, not focusing on the humanitarian aid aspect, which is obviously very important, on that second pillar, when you look at a country like Indonesia, from the perspective of the work that you and your colleagues are doing, what do you think's achievable, and what do you think you can do in partnership with the Indonesian government to make more progress?
Wow. I'll try to link the threads in my head quickly, but I think what fundamentally makes food systems resilient is having government ownership, and there is no lack of that in Indonesia, as you just heard actually Jay say. So Indonesia in many ways portrays a government-led system in food security that is exemplary. Why I say this is because they anchor a lot of their work in food security also in their shock-responsive social protection systems. There are not many countries who have social protection systems that help pull the most vulnerable up and support them to become more resilient. And Indonesia does that, and I would argue that their Free Nutritious Meals initiative is an example of that. We come in with school meals, which Indonesia is now growing to over 80 million children as well, another example. And that builds resilience of communities in many ways. It links smallholder farmers, homegrown school feeding to the schools. It creates off-takers, right, for the farmers through the school meals. It helps build the nutrition of the children and diversifying the diet that kids get. And for some kids could be the only meal they have. So there is so much leadership that Indonesia shows in that realm that for us is important as a story to tell the rest of the world. The other thing Indonesia does really well in food systems, in our view, is they lean into data-driven anticipatory action. We all live in a world where climate shocks are significant, and we don't wait anymore for the shocks to happen. So they lean into data, into analytics, and into responding before a crisis hits through their social protection.
Right, so you've talked about the progress that's been made in Indonesia. Where would you say more progress needs to be made, or where are the gaps that need to be closed? Give us an honest perspective on where you think more needs to happen.
I think Jay's going to give you that.
We're gonna, no, but from the programs that you have on the ground and from where your colleagues tell you about the gaps that need to be closed, where would you say that there's more that needs to be done?
You know, I mean, the Indonesian government was the first to put their hand up and say, we want to scale up our school meals and we need your help to do it. We need to improve our supply chains. We need to make sure that they're functioning more efficiently, help us there, and help us reach more children. And to me, they're admitting where they have a shortcoming and where they need support. And that's where we are going to be leaning in with an alliance of partners actually to support Indonesia. We're coming in with the Rockefellers, with Novo Nordisk, with our own expertise in the World Food Programme. But that's exactly the kind of thing I think we look forward to. You know, put your hand up and say where your shortcomings are, and we're going in those two.
So, Jay, Rania asked you the question. Where would you say there's the gap that needs to be closed? Where have you and your colleagues seen progress, but where is then more that needs to be done? Looking at your perspective as a major producer of food, both from seeds, moving on down the value chain.
I think it's very inspiring when the leadership in a country is so focused on agriculture, farmers, etc. And I was very surprised to have that meeting with the president. You know, I think the opportunity is there. We need to upgrade technology. I think in the past, some of the policies have been, erratic. But I think and that has disrupted the investment in the R&D. So agriculture is a risky business for farmers. There's climate change, there's droughts, floods, there is commodity prices, there's disease, pest. And for all these aspects, we need to really train farmers. And when you have to retrain farmers, they're taking a risk. They don't know. They're used to a traditional practice. They're used to farmers save seed. They need to go buy seed. So I think we need to share the risk with them. I think the governments need to understand that to get a transformation, if you want a large industrial company to invest in Indonesia, you go and you give them capital, you say, I'll give you subsidies, I'll give you tax rebates, I'll give you so many incentives. Why are we not? We want farmers to transform from producing 2 tons, 3 tons to 6 tons, 8 tons. They're going to have to invest more capital and technology. The governments need to have the same view that I'm asking him to go from farm save seed to pay, $10 an acre or $20 an acre for seed. He's taking a huge risk. He doesn't know. So we need to create a reward system. And what wherever we have alignment with the government, we offer them, a parametric insurance. We say that, okay, we'll share the risk with you, transition, and once they see they're getting 6 tons yield, obviously everybody wants to get richer, everybody wants to, have more money, and farmers are no different. And when you give them technology to better germination, better development, more yield. And then we also recommend, if it's with prediction of weather, if they're going to have a drought year, you don't grow corn, you grow sorghum. So many other aspects. And then also we, as providers of technology, we need to acclimatize our genetics on seeds. We need to bring in a better technology so that on the plateaus, which are highland, you give them a different hybrid of seeds. On the lowland area, which is more flood prone, you give them different types. So there's a lot of adoption required, for which governments need to have a very clear, consistent policies, so that in companies like us who are investing have clear vision that, yes, next 20 years, we are going to work with the rice farmers in Indonesia, the wheat or whatever, corn farmers in Indonesia, the sweet corn farmers, and we are going to give them more resilient crops, seeds, so they can get they can become more profitable. So I think what we expect from the governments is a very clear long-term policy where which we can put in our capital and deliver really the best technologies for them to take risk.
So you talked about technology. Just on a practical basis in Indonesia, just give us an example where the technology that you and your colleagues have developed has really made an impact in the last 3-4 years. Just kind of paint a picture of where the livelihoods of farmers and the people that you serve have been transformed through the technologies that you've developed.
Yeah, so just an example, we've 10x'd our corn seed production in Indonesia, because farmers are seeing, wow, I'm using disease-tolerant hybrids of corn, and I'm able to double my yield, triple my yield. And so, that business in terms of acres would have gone from, or hectares would have gone from 100,000 hectares to almost 1 million hectares of plantation. We are leaders on sweet corn, and those acres, because highly susceptible to disease. So we've been able to develop hybrids which are more disease tolerant. Farmers are using less fungicides for that. And so they see the benefit and they try it out and say, wow, this works, this is giving me. And so a lot of, all those business of us are growing at a substantial, more than 20% a year. We've launched some biosolution products for farmers where they can actually, crops can have a heat stress. So when it's a very hot spell, the plants become more resilient to heat stress, and they don't lose they don't drop their flowering or seeds. So we have worked with the palm plantation guys who, at the nursery level, the mortality of the nurseries in the palm plantations was very high. So they plant 100,000 saplings and they get 50,000. And so we've worked with them, given them some soil-based products which actually increase their germination. I mean, their mortality, the improvement is almost up to 90% survivability. So lots of things happening on the ground. Now we believe that it's going to continue to scale, and I believe that with the right kind of support from the government, Indonesia, there's no reason why Indonesia should import rice or corn or anything.
Thank you, Jay. So, Himanshu, we've heard from Jay about how on the ground technology is transforming the work of the communities that his business is serving. From your perspective, looking across the different markets that you're supporting and the different businesses that you're supporting, just paint a similar picture of where you see the technologies that you're developing impact on a very practical basis in the different livelihoods, in the different landscapes and communities that you're supporting.
Thanks, Ben. I think I'll go back to the comments that Rania and Jay made. For us, as an AI entrepreneur, we look at, for me as an AI entrepreneur, I look at even the food system as a system standpoint, right? The best analogy is our electricity grid system, right? We talk about blackouts in electricity. We talk about curtailment in electricity. We talk about reliability there. You can't just talk about reliability in electricity by just talking about generators and consumers, right? So when the Russia-Ukraine war happened, we had one government from Central Asia call us. And their objective was, wheat prices are going up. There's been shortage both in India and of course Russia, Ukraine. How can you help us, source enough grains for this season? And eventually, what do we do for our country so that we can grow enough wheat in our country itself? So we asked them, when do you need this? Tomorrow. So no, we can't work like that. So what we said is we need to map your entire food system grid. So what that means is where food is grown, to how it's transported, how it's stored, and then how it's exported or consumed, right? So once you know the entire food grid, and then you can run simulations, or let's run simulations, stress test on if there's a drought, if there's a heat wave. So what are the hotspots appearing now based on the demand-supply gap? And if those hotspots are on the producer side, right? That means the producer are there's a lot of volatility in production because of heat. Then, okay, let's talk about the interventions with their ROIs that we can use there, including seeds that UPL produces, all the way to better water management techniques or better forecasting and yada, yada, yada. But if the hotspots are between in the transport region or storage, and let's talk about what kind of storage solutions would help you guys. So food security, cannot be talked about until we talk about food from a system standpoint. And not just Indonesian system standpoint, but also a global standpoint, right? So Indonesia is of course self-sufficient in rice in most years, except for El Nino and La Nina years, and they want to become eventually self-sufficient in wheat as well. But we call this as a butterfly effect in food security. So what that means is, if a butterfly flaps its wings, in India, and that creates some weird weather patterns in India, production goes down in India, suddenly there's a shortage in the wheat market globally, price will go up, and then Indonesia will also be impacted by that, right? So we can't just look at a food security imperative from just a sovereignty, just like a insular viewpoint. So with that government, what we said is the another intervention that we need to do is whatever volatility you can reduce using local interventions, please do that. But then we need to form strategic partnerships with other countries that you are sourcing wheat from, and the countries where we think we are going to become more productive because of climate change for wheat production. So then we give them recommendations of these are the 4 suppliers around the world that your country should be strategically forming partnerships, either at a government level or at the private sector level. So for us, and then AI becomes like, once we have mapped the entire food system, the grid, we have the data, then of course applying AI on that is a lot easier. The difficult part is actually mapping the entire food system.
But so if we just focus a little bit on what your business actually does, how does the technologies that you're developing in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, how does a farmer in the middle of Java really consume and take advantage of the work that you're doing? Just describe the process by which the insights that your businesses are developing are actually having a direct impact in different communities.
Absolutely. So I'll give you 2 specific examples. One is with our work with smallholder farmers in India, more than 1 million, with ITC, the largest food company there. With them, we have developed these adaptation playbooks. What that means is, if you're a farmer, smallholder farmer in some remote village, you input lat long, where you are, what crop variety you're growing, and then our platform will simulate using diffusion models. What is the current state of resilience of this farmer at A, and then in the next 10 to 20 years, where will this resilience state be? So if you move, and what would it take for this farmer to move from A to B to C, which is higher resilience state? And that would require, like, the model will automatically churn out interventions on, like, this farmer needs to move to the better seed trait, and this is the right seed trait that needs to be developed. And then we can bring in, like, Jay's company or Bayer there or whatnot, like, hey, these are the companies that can actually supply those traits in those markets, to, like, better irrigation, like this farmer needs to move to this drip irrigation technique here, or better water management. So all of this, instead of, like, you having to conduct trials and then finding results, you can now simulate that in the platform itself. And so that, one, it expedites, the adaptation, we call it, like the adaptation movement, resilience movement with the farmer. And then B, it also makes the adaptation financing more effective and efficient, because we know what specific intervention is going to have the highest outcome for this farmer.
So we talked quite a lot about farmers, and we're lucky enough to have one here on the panel with us. Anna, from your perspective in Brazil, we've been having a conversation here about Indonesia, the progress that Indonesia has made, and the gaps that it needs to close. Just reflect on what you think the lessons for Indonesia are from the work that you've been doing in Brazil, and what can the Indonesians learn from the progress that you and your peers have made?
Good day, everyone. Thank you for having me. I was in Indonesia 2 years ago. It was quite interesting because even though we're so far away, we're very similar in so many things in terms of even the food. I remember having this coconut, it reminds me of Bahia or some other places, and the warmth, and then, I felt just home somehow, even though it was very, very, very different. And some things that I feel we look like, but it's also different. We also do face inequalities in both countries. And even though we have technologies, we need to scale them up and to cross the bridge so we can actually embed everything that's already existing. So we need to better distribute the future that is already there. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about Brazil's context and what we have been doing so far for the past 4 decades and how it has changed my life, for example. So Brazil, 40 years ago, Brazil was a food importer. And nowadays, how massive Brazil is in terms of food exporting, right? One of the things that you probably don't know is that in Cerrado region, we didn't have much technology back then to have food and etc. But we did have Embrapa, which is a Brazilian company related with the government. And they had this kind of program in which people, they were abroad to understand how we could make better agriculture. And because of that program, we started having technology and science to understand how we can better grow things in the region that we couldn't before. So my dad is, for example, one of these classical examples. He came from the south of Brazil. He traveled like 2,000 kilometers to go to the middle of Brazil. And he had an opportunity to actually do something and start the farming business with another 2 partners. And 25 years ago, the maximum yield you could get was about 20 sacks per hectare. Nowadays, you can have like 3 times more, so 60, 70 kilos, sacks, bags, yeah, per hectare. And this is incredible if you think about productivity. And there are so many practices, from like actually seeing there's so much innovation in the seed itself. So there's technology behind it, the seed, there's technology whenever you're talking about the input companies that we're putting. Also, we have this challenge within tropical agriculture, which is very, very different than the global north. And that's also something we need to acknowledge. Context matters. There's no one size fits all. I know it sounds obvious, but actually the way sometimes we're handling politics, it's not that obvious. So sometimes we're putting everybody together in the same bucket and we're saying we have the rules for everybody, and that doesn't work. So we really need to understand context if we want to design better food systems. I'm going to give you an example. So whenever we're talking about carbon, really, I have never been able to enter a carbon program. Everything is so complex, even though we're doing the practices already, and it's not designed for farmers, and it's also not designed for actually measuring what's within our context. So if you think of the grass, it goes up the methodologies because we're using models and methodologies, but not real. So it goes up to 30 centimeters of the grass root they measure. But in Brazil, we could go up to 1 meter capturing carbon. So you're only measuring 30, but it could go up to 1 meter. That's not fair to me, is it? And I mean, we're not making any money out of that. But still, so we still have lots of problems, but even with all those problems,
right?
brachiara, yeah, we can have brachiara, which is one kind of grass. But there's lots of solutions happening, and it's quite interesting to survive in this world in which we still struggle with technology, but we also do have great technology happening. I mean, I use RFID for the cattle, for identifying, and then we have biotechnology, and then we have great people. On the other hand, we also like very basic things, so it's quite a paradox.
I just want to add to what she was saying. Brazil had on soybean, where Brazil produces so much, and they've had 3x. You had a disease problem called Asian soybean rust. If you get Asian soybean rust, your yield is what, 1/10. You lose your whole crop. And the companies like us, UPL developed a particular technology to fight soybean rust, Asian soybean. It was such a disastrous disease that you actually send drones up in the air to check the spore count of the disease, and then you decided whether you're going to even plant the crop, because if you got it, there was no solution. And today, almost every Brazilian soybean farmer uses our technology on their farm, 100%, and it's not a problem anymore. So it's like a vaccine, right? We solved that problem. So, nature has a continuous, they throw continuous challenges, and we as technology companies with farmers are constantly evolving technology to fight these challenges, to make sure there's productivity gains.
Rania, we've heard a lot about technology. All of the speakers have touched on that. From the perspective of the World Food Programme, where you see many interesting innovations, you have lots of people coming and pitching to you for your support, endorsement, financing, whatever it might be. Just give us a sense of the technologies that you're backing for the future, the ones that you think are going to give the most bang for their buck, and put that through both the prism of both the Indonesian environment, but also Brazil, given the context that Anna gave us.
Thanks a lot, Ben, for the question. In fact, one of the points I consistently make is we focus a lot on innovations that come with technology. There are also innovations that come without technology. And in the farming sector especially, and in food production, that is as relevant. And I'm going to start with a story in the Sahel, actually. In the Sahel, we used AI to restore 400,000 hectares of desert that we reclaimed for communities that now grow, harvest, have school meals for their kids, and do not need humanitarian assistance anymore. But the AI I refer to isn't the one you refer to. We call it ancestral intelligence. And that was simply using the half-moon technique, which, I mean, I'm happy to share. It's just crescents on the ground that use very little water, that help restore the land and flora. It is incredible what we managed to do over 5 years in reclaiming the desert across 5 countries in the Sahel.
Yep.
And I think it's important to highlight that there are, and we should all speak to, AI, the 2 AIs actually, because they make a significant difference. On the AI that this Davos is focused on and the world is focused on at the moment, we have been early adopters of technologies and innovation in WFP a long time. Predictive analysis for us is critical.
Yep.
We work with Google on satellite imagery and ability to assess crises once they happen very quickly. An assessment that would take me 2 to 3 months to do before in the World Food Programme now takes anything from 48 to 72 hours using satellite imagery powered by Google. We also use predictive analysis for what you refer to, Jay, to support farmers, smallholder farmers across West Africa. And there, for those who have smartphones or have just old analogs, really, we're able to send them weather forecasts for the next week, and that has been transformational. So it's not always very high technology and analytics, but transformative for food production. Finally, I would say the big thing that for us is critical in predictive analytics to improve early warning because of the scale of climate shocks that we're seeing, it has a direct benefit for anticipatory action. When we know a drought is coming or a flash flood is coming, we are able to respond with farmers and communities sooner than the crisis hits. That saves us collectively, often, tens of millions of dollars. In Somalia, they get droughts followed by flash floods almost immediately. We managed to get $1 million to move 100,000 people out of flash floods way. If we had not done that 5 days before the flash floods, we would have collectively paid about $40 million to respond to that. And I think we are really buckling down on anticipatory action and ability to forewarn and forearm with good early warning analysis across the world. So that, I would say, is where we are trying to lean into expertise in this strip this week.
Anna, just to build on Rania's point, where would you see, so there's obviously all tech, whether it's high tech or low tech, makes an impact. Just building on the kind of low tech point, where would you see that changing both your business and also the wider community in which you and your family are working in?
So one of my biggest privileges on earth is that I'm a second-generation farmer of a farm that's kind of almost industrial scale in Brazil. About
Just tell us about the farm. How big is it?
Okay.
Where is it?
So
How much water do you have?
Okay, so the bigger farm is right in the middle of Brazil, near Brasilia, which is the capital, not Rio, not São Paulo, not Buenos Aires, please. You know, there are Brasilia. That's where I live. The farms are about 2.5 hours from there, which is close regarding like Brazil size, right? And we have about, we plant, that's something else that's different about Brazil. What we have planted is different than what we have actually in land because we can plant more than once in the same thing. But also, we do have to preserve area by law. So in Cerrado region, 20% of our area must be preserved because the law says we should do it. So it doesn't mean we cannot grow in the whole area. So it's kind of a tricky math. I cannot grow in everything, but sometimes I can also do twice in the same area. So in terms of crops, we have about 20,000 hectares that we plant, which is a big size for Brazil. It's not massive, but it's also big. It's already big. It's kind of industrial size. So we have machinery, we have technology, we have AI, we have precision agriculture, use satellites to understand where to put each input, and then there's lots and lots of embedded technology in that sense. Well, that's one thing. The other thing is that right half an hour from there, like 1 hour to half an hour from there. In the same stage, there's also different context. That's why I was saying context matters. My grandparents, from my mom's side, they had this farm, and then with the farm we bought it. And we started business from scratch, kind of 20 years later than the first farm. Without the same infrastructure, but within the beef cattle industry, right? And that's a different business at all, because we need to start like building fences, and this is low tech really that we were doing. So for example, one of the things that it was surprisingly important, the cattle would just go to the river and then drink water from the river. We had to build troughs so they wouldn't go to the river and they wouldn't cause erosion. So this is a very low tech thing, but it's game changing in terms of the quality of the water. So also improving the pasture, so pasture management. I mean, my grandpa from my mom's side, he didn't have much money, he didn't have education, he only studied to the 4th grade. So he didn't have capital or the means to do it. And then because my dad is an agronomist, we saw the pasture as a crop. So we were putting manure, and we're just using different ways of using that. But those are, I mean, I'm the same person and I face inequalities in my own space, you know? So there are all different kinds of ways of cropping. And also if you talk about fruits, it's a different value chain. And if you talk about different regions or cultures and etc., that's why context is important. And one thing that, I don't know how familiar you are with it, but the CEO of NVIDIA yesterday was talking about how AI, you need to have this infrastructure layer, so you have to have energy, and then you have to have chips, cloud, and et cetera, till you get to AI. This is the same for us. There's like very basic things we need to build up on so we can have the higher things. So internet is something that we still struggle. We do have Starlink, but the manager of the farm was calling me, hey, can you please help us out because internet's not working? And then whenever I go, we still use radios, you know, and we still run with the cattle. So it's quite interesting to see how those inequalities and paradoxes happen in our farms, yeah.
Himanshu, let me ask you a related question. Your business, obviously, you're trying to grow and develop it, but you're also managing your investors, and you're also seeking to, I'm sure, go through subsequent funding rounds. Looking at this question from the perspective of the investment community, where do you think that, focusing specifically on climate resilient technologies, where's the market now? What are they most interested in investing in? And where are they putting pressure on you to develop new and different forms of technology to meet the kind of needs that they think are investable?
It's a very heavy question. I wish there's no investor. I hope there's no investor sitting there. But can I just build on what Rania said?
You can build on
the
Rania.
AI, ancestral intelligence. I think, you know, as an engineer, I just can't help but, you know, try and connect the dots. If that practice data, right, from a specific geography, specific farm, is made available to us, right? Either it's in the form of like text, or like farmers sending like voice notes, like this is how our ancestors used to plant, this is the seed variety and whatnot. We can create something called AGI, not the artificial general intelligence, but ancestral guided intelligence. In fact, I think like in Mexico as well, we work and with PepsiCo and with farmers there. They talk about like how their ancestors used to farm, and we do conduct a lot of interviews there. Like, hey, how can we use that to augment our AI models? And we work, for example, like Jay's team on seed trait development, and these guys are one of the most innovative. So if we get that access to database, then of course we can also help Jay's company to launch those traits with the context that you're talking about, right? And the most of the context resides in this ancestral intelligence you're mentioning. As far as the investor outlook is concerned, I think adaptation is becoming hot. When I was fundraising in 2018, I will pitch to the Silicon Valley investors. You know the response they'll give me? Are you running a non-profit? To like 1.5 years ago, when an investor came on 24th December, day before Christmas, and said like, we want to lead your B round, here's your term sheet, you can sign it before the new year, right? So that's how the industry has moved along. And yesterday I was in a breakfast meeting organized by the CEO of PepsiCo. There were at least 10 to 12 other food company CEOs there. And the agenda, one of the key agendas there, was the business case for resilience. So if businesses see profits, great, voice note, we're talking about voice notes. So businesses see profits, which I think, as Jay was talking about, it's no longer like, philanthropic issue. It's no longer a charity issue. It's very much an economic issue and a very much competitiveness issue for countries and a profit issue for companies.
Can I second that? So one of the things that I also believe is important for Indonesia, but for Brazil and for everybody else, is to understand that farming is also a business, and we need to share the risks that you're saying. And in order to make better food security, or to make better food and food resilient, farming needs to be a viable business, not because of the profit itself, but because of the livelihoods of people, So if we do really take care of farmers, we're going to take care of food. And we need to take that seriously. So if the farmers are with all the burdens in terms of the risk, if the farmers are with the burdens in terms of we're input, we take the inputs, we don't get to say how much it's going to cost. We are price takers, we sell commodities and etc. If we don't think ways in which farmers can actually have better livelihoods and have a similar story as I had, because my family had nothing, and then I'm here at Davos, I speak English. That's very different than where my dad came from. So how can we actually make people lives better? But we need to center either farming or people's lives, so we can actually start building food on top of that.
Ben, I'd like to challenge that a little bit. I think for places like Brazil and Indonesia, there is incredible opportunity to bring investments, IFIs, climate finance, to bring the private and the public together. Where we struggle is 70% of where we work is in fragile contexts, in conflict, post-conflict, where investors are not interested no matter how high the return. And we know it's high risk and high return, but the system doesn't enable that. So I must put a stake down to say investors don't go where risk and return is in play. They go where they know it's safer and there are opportunities. And you asked earlier what is missing in Indonesia. I think certainly a lot more engagement of the private sector to support the government in what it's trying to do is critical. And we see the public-private space is the only way to move forward, given the scale of challenges. And I don't yet see the private sector come in with both a philanthropic eye and then a return on investment lens, but both have to come in. It cannot just be return on investment at a time where business and riches and finances are growing, and poverty and inequality and hunger is also growing. So I think our message in Davos has to always be balanced, that we have a responsibility beyond just growing our businesses.
Right. We've got about 10 minutes left. I'd love to hear if there's views from the audience, either your point of view on this conversation or questions to the panelists. So please be brave, put your hand up. Radu.
Hi, I'm from Romania. I also come from an agricultural country. Two short questions. One, if you have the feeling that there could be an emerging African champion from this perspective, right? Because Brazil comes from Latin America. I think they can hear me, right? And Indonesia from Asia. And the second one would be, one of the things that I've been faced with by working also with this industry is that agriculture is sometimes seen as a sign of backwardness. And if you have the feeling that perhaps we can change that in the context of agri-tech for something. Thank you so much.
Who's going to
Can
take
go. So just to answer that very simply, some of the richest people in the world, or richest people in Brazil, are farmers. With their lands worth billions. You have a very, very wealthy farmer sitting next to me. And that's a proper business. In terms of where I see, I think Indonesia has huge companies from palm oil plantations, very successful. Probably they've changed the biofuel and oil market dramatically with their success. So I think there are a lot of every continent has success stories. And if you look at Africa, if you look at cocoa, if you look at South Africa, fruits exports, you look at what can happen in Zambia with just the kind of right structure. What's happening in rice exports from India? We are huge surplus in rice from our food. You know, we have 1.4 billion people. We still export a lot of rice. And actually, President Trump's not so happy about it either. But I think that every country, if you see a real success story, consistent success story in agriculture, is Vietnam. They've transformed themselves in the last 20, 25 years, couple of times on different crops, different value chains. So if you look at different parts of Africa and coming to that, I think there is great success. If you look at coffee farmers around the world, they're making a lot of money. I think the sugar cane with the biofuel industry. So there are a lot of success stories. Not all crops in all countries do well because of whatever their value chain connection, the technology, the weather, etc. But so just to give you an example, right? These are, Argentina is a amazing, Africa, floriculture export from Kenya, avocado export. But if you look at Brazil, I mean, look at Argentina, they have a 30% export tax and they still make money farming. So there are a lot of examples of very, very successful value chains. Chile, amazing, one of the most profitable fruit crop country. So.
Your question was also about youth engagement, also on the continent. I mean, Africa is going to, it has the largest youth bulge in recent history. We know that, and 1 in every 5 consumers over the next 10 years will be in Africa. What we are observing is that youth are interested because of agri-tech. And that's been actually incredibly rewarding. We have an innovation accelerator that launches challenges. And it's youth across Africa that take this up, and you see them. Quite a number of my friends, they're not youth, but they left regular jobs to start farming in Sudan, my home country, when it was more stable. Certainly, my best friend lost everything when she tried organic garlic, but she has not given up, and she's still haranguing her husband for money. The issue is there isn't investment coming into many of these youth who want to try. But I see in Kenya a vibrant youth engagement, and in Ghana increasingly so.
I can even say that, you know, technology today with telecom in Africa, and particularly in India, using weather, data, AI, and, you know, partners like Himanshu's company, you know, today we are able to give micro insurance and deliver with India's UPI scheme. A farmer is rewarded instantly within minutes of a weather event or days. There is no brokers involved, there's no transfer. There is a weather event, the AI model tells you, yes, the insurance is due, and he gets paid out money.
I want to know about that.
You're too rich. Yeah.
No, Anna, and Anna, what hooked me on this is it's not even based on yield. It's just the early warning on the weather.
Exactly.
And the payouts come.
You know, on your point, I think you also raised about farming being seen as like a backward thing. Right? Yeah, so farming being seen as a backward thing. Now, I'm no expert in farming, right? And I cannot speak on behalf of the farmers. What I can say is it's becoming cool again. You know who's one of the most influential TikTokers in the US is a farmer. So I read about him somewhere that he has around these many followers, I think more than a million followers. And he just like documents his practices, what he does and how he enjoys it and so on and so forth. Must be like 24, 25-year-old guy. So I went and checked his TikTok. So I downloaded TikTok myself and checked his TikTok. And after that, my feed is full of like all these farmers like documenting and like, you know, how we are enjoying it. So it's becoming cool that way, like how youth is going back into it. And the second is I also see like a lot of my, like I left India 12, 13 years ago. So, but I see like many engineering, you know, students who went to the US and now coming back and starting farming like avocado, pulses and so on and so forth because they see like it's a profitable venture.
Can I have a comment on that as
This
well?
is the last comment from Anna, and then we're going to wrap up.
Oh, sorry. So that's actually my study topic in terms of how we can better communicate the city in the field, because I still feel we have this divide, but it's not only about farming, but it's about the world, right? Left and right, black and white, and this is still happening. And I still feel that farming is becoming to get cool at some point, but what is not good is that farming is not good enough for to be at the table and we have dialogues to build policy together. So that's the point why we should talk about, because even though we're here talking about farming, I'm still almost the only farmer who is around, and I'm still privileged, you know? So we need to have more farmers in the room and to make cool and make people attractive. But also we need to take seriously whatever you're talking, because context matters. So there's like different sizes of farms, and they also suffer from poverty and also suffer from food security. And we are not tackling this into policy. And this is really something that we should tackle, and to have a seat at the table so we can have debate and design things together.
Right. That's it. Thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.
I was told once that the key of an important event or conference or panel is to make sure that you learn one new thing, just one, you hadn't heard before you started, and ancestral intelligence is the new thing that I've learned today, and we can all reflect on that. I want to thank Rania, Jay, Anna, and Himanshu. I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank the Indonesian Pavilion for hosting this important debate, and I wish you all the best in the rest of your important time at Davos. Thank you.
Thank you.